One thing that I've learned in my journey too, I had played so many personas. I had so many masks of who I thought I had to be, who I had to show up as, that I didn't even know myself. And as I came to know myself more deeply, I recognized being authentic in this space specifically is really important, but it plays out in all areas of your life. Being authentic with who you are just allows you the freedom to just be all of you, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that gives you more and more freedom to just
Yeah.
embrace that and really just truly live your life the way that you want to live it. Um, and being coming from a cult and coming from a space where it was like I was never allowed to live the life that I wanted. I had to conform. I had to do it just as I was. The more that I was like, well, if I can't be me, I can't fake this anymore.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become the best possible versions of themselves and to strive for overall health, mental health, emotional health, physical health, all of the healths, without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who've been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time somebody shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. So it is very nice to meet you.
Yes.
Um, can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Yeah, of course. I like that question. That's a good question. So I'm a trauma-informed coach, as well as an RTT therapist. So I help women really embrace and find their authentic self after childhood trauma, abusive relationships, and really be able to connect with themselves more deeply. Because once we kind of get past what's blocking us, we can really start to embrace our lives. And the reason why I became this person, is because that was my story. I, had to rewrite my own life. I had my own abuse, my own childhood trauma. I grew up in a cult. So, I had
Mm.
a lot of shaming and conditioning and programming from that space that I had to kind of break free of. And then I also had an abusive relationship for 17 years of my life. And when I broke free from both of those things, I went on this really deep healing journey and had to face parts of myself that I never thought I'd have to face. But what it did is it led me to really take my pain and turn it into purpose. And so it's why I want to show women they don't have to suffer the way that I did for so long. And I
Mm.
really want to help them really, truly live rather than just survive.
Yeah, I love that. And I know a lot of people don't realize that even after they get out of the trauma, it's still in their body, you
Yes.
know? And
Yeah.
so I'm curious to hear your story about growing up in a cult. That stuck out for me.
Yeah, it usually does. It's not really, I mean, it's not every day you meet someone that, kind of grew up
Right.
in such a confined way. Growing up that way, I was raised in it. It was generational. Like my parents were in it. Their parents were in it. So it was like it kind of just kept going down generationally, right? And so when you're raised in that, you don't know anything outside of it. I
Mhm.
like to call it like I felt like we lived in a bubble because everything on the outside was deemed as satanic, bad, wrong. The people outside of that society and religion we were told were bad, and we could not be around them, couldn't associate with them. So, like, going to school, I couldn't hang out with the kids that I made friends with at school. Like, and I always just felt like, oh, everybody's bad on the outside. And it made us believe that we were good, that we were the chosen ones, that we were the only people that were good. Everybody on the outside was bad and needed saving. And so I felt like I had this huge savior complex. Not only was I supposed to go and save all the people that were outside of the cult, but then I started to show up like that in relationships, right? And
Mm.
that's what got me trapped in those abusive relationships because I thought I had to save everybody. I thought I had to save that partner. I thought I had to help him and fix him. And it just set me up for a lifetime of never worrying about myself and worrying about everybody else.
Mm. What point did you realize that you didn't have to save everyone?
Oh gosh. I feel like that was just like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think I've always had this, I call myself the recovering people pleaser. Feeling like I always had to take care of everybody. Yeah, like I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
women who are on this journey really we can resonate with that. Like we've been taking care of everybody else and we've been told it's selfish to take care of ourselves first. Like we've been told that, it's not something that women do, right? We've been like women are supposed to be the caretakers, women are supposed to do this and that. And it's really just not true. It's like we've been lied to. We've been lied to. It's like you have to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
You can't give from an empty cup. And I think I finally realized, putting myself first and taking care of myself and putting up boundaries was the most emotionally, mentally healthy thing that I possibly could do for myself. And letting go of like those older versions of me that just it doesn't belong here anymore, And I think it's funny, it's like the older you get too, the less you care about anybody, like what other people think or what other people feel. You're just
Yeah,
like, I'm gonna do me, you do you. Like I don't judge,
exactly.
I don't want you judging me. And that's just the way I feel like, more and more.
Yeah. I know. I don't know if it showed up like this for you, but for me, and I just learned this about myself like 6 months ago. My people pleasing showed up as one of the forms it showed up as was toxic positivity. So I would keep a smile on my face. I was always like the happy friend and, everything's going to be great. And that was so that I wouldn't be showing the emotions that I was actually feeling,
Mm.
so that I wouldn't be making other people uncomfortable that I'm having a bad day.
Mm.
So it was like
Mm.
I stuffed emotions to make other people happy.
Yes. Well, you and I are the same. Yeah, I did the same
Yeah.
thing. I didn't believe I deserved, on many levels, like to be able to sit with my uncomfortability in front of other people. I didn't want to make other people uncomfortable. And maybe it's because I didn't think I was worthy enough for
Mm,
people to like be there and support me, because I was always the one supporting everyone else. But then this need to also recognize, okay, well, it's okay that sometimes I'm sad and I'm not always happy, right?
yeah.
And I think that we kind of get in that space, especially in personal development. I think where it's like you got to be positive, or you're not going to get what you want, or you got to, you always got to have it. That's just untrue. You're a human,
Yeah.
and you are meant to feel like the dysregulation of the emotions, and then come back into like feeling, oh, it's okay. Like I was able to feel that emotion, process it, and then move on. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem is a lot of people, why a lot of women still hold a lot of trauma in their bodies as well, is because we do stuff down our emotions. We stuff down how we really feel. And then what happens is we never process that stuff, but it's still there. It's all still there.
Yeah.
It's still playing out in our system. And it's why I think society is more sick. Why, we're not able, like, where things are trapped inside of us and we're not recognizing it.
Yeah. I think a huge thing in society too is like people comparing themselves to people on social media who always put out that I'm okay vibe, if that makes sense. And I think it's important when, especially like influencers or, people who have a big following, it's okay for you to say, I'm not okay today. And
Yeah,
then I think people can relate to them better because they're like, oh, okay, so they're not always happy. I'm not weird because I'm having a bad day.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think being authentic.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I've learned in my journey too. I had played so many personas. I had so many masks of who I thought I had to be, who I had to show up as, that I didn't even know myself. And as I came to know myself more deeply, I recognized being authentic in this space specifically is really important. But it plays out in all areas of your life. Being authentic with who you are just allows you the freedom to just be all of you, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that gives you more and more freedom to just
Yeah.
embrace that and really just truly live your life the way that you want to live it. Um, and being coming from a cult and coming from a space where it was like I was never allowed to live the life that I wanted. I had to conform. I had to do it just as I was. And when I left, I was abandoned by my family and all of my friends. So everybody, the whole community that I knew, completely abandoned. But the more that I was like, well, if I can't be me, I can't fake this anymore, right? Because like it didn't feel like it didn't feel real to me. It didn't feel possible
Yeah.
because it was like, how am I going to continue a life like that? Um, and I think a lot of us women tend to do that to try to fit into boxes that we don't really need to stay in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thought came to me when you were saying that your family abandoned you is I don't even know how to put it into words, but like you were um venturing out to become yourself, this person that they don't even know.
Mhm.
So were they abandoning that person or were they abandoning the person that they did know? Is that making sense? I have weird.
Yeah, they're abandoning the person that they don't know because the minute that I didn't want to conform, I wasn't a part of that society anymore, and I said I don't believe it anymore. Um, they thought that I was evil, right? They
Mm,
thought that there was something wrong with me, and so they were abandoning who they thought I was becoming,
mm.
and I didn't fit into their box anymore. I didn't fit into the mold that they had wanted to create and keep me in. And that all of a sudden just meant that I can be discarded.
Were you able to find more people?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the universe works in mysterious ways. You lose a community, but then you gain a community. And
Hmm.
I felt like everyone that I ever needed kind of popped into my life to make me feel like, okay, wait a second, you don't have to feel like you're alone because you're not alone. And there's still times where it's like, there is like this grieving process of not having my parents or not having the community that I did have at one time that I thought loved me, right? And feeling that deep abandonment from that. Like
Yeah.
abandonment one still comes up for me. Even after all the healing that I've done, it's still like this fear of being abandoned again because it was so strong. It was so deeply um ingrained in me that would never happen, and then it happened, and yeah, it was really painful.
Yeah. Hmm. It reminds me of a saying that people get wrong all the time, and the fact that they get it wrong makes it beautiful. It's the blood is thicker than water saying.
Yes.
The entire saying is actually, I think, if I get it wrong, listeners, please correct me. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, meaning that your friends can be more of a family than your actual family.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just
I
made me think of
wholeheartedly
that.
agree with that. It's like you remove the toxicity and you bring in the people that are meant to fill that space, right? And
Yeah,
that's healthy for you and good for you emotionally and mentally. And I think and I've always felt like it's like, okay, well now I'm making and creating a new family. Yes, it may not be like my birth family, and it may not be the people that I've known all my life, but it's like creating that new family and that sense of belonging because it's a human need.
yeah.
We all want to feel like we belong. We all need that connection. We desire it. And if we don't have it, that's when depression and anxiety comes in, and loneliness and sadness. And it's really needed for all of us.
What is one of your craziest stories that you think grew you the most?
Oof, craziest story. Um, so I think the thing that created the most growth actually is after I left my ex-husband and I left the cult. I started to, again, I started the healing journey. I went to therapy. I recognized something wasn't right. But I met a partner that was what I didn't know at the time was a very healthy, conscious man. Like he was very like aware and understanding, and he could see my trauma before I could even
Mm.
see it. And I tested that relationship over and over and over again just to see if he would abandon me.
Mm.
And the more that we kind of got in that relationship and we fell in love, I continued to test that. But it was probably the biggest part of my growth was being able to get in that relationship, recognize what triggers and wounds I still needed to heal from in the relationship, to be able to face those. But
Mm.
him be able to like hold a really like safe space to like not feel like he was going to abandon me just because I was reacting or struggling with something in the current moment because of past trauma. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, so I had so much PTSD from being abused in my relationship, domestic, mental, emotional abuse. So all of that, my body was still holding on to so much of that abuse. And so he was able to hold that safe space. And that was my true growth. Like I felt like that really helped me blossom and face what I needed to face and work through. And that's created really my most growth, to be honest.
I love
And
that.
and they do say that relationships are where you grow. It's like
Yeah.
either it becomes this toxic relationship where you play out the same patterns, or you come into a relationship and you face what you need to face and learn what you need to learn from it and grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that, it stays in your body. Um, I was in an abusive marriage also, and when I moved in with my now husband, um, and even still sometimes I will hesitate just to ask him to take out the trash because in my previous relationship, I would get an earload of why I'm a horrible person asking him to take out the trash because he's busy playing his game. So like, and
Oh
I
my
carried that
gosh.
with me into this relationship, and like, and my husband knows the whole story. Um, but sometimes he'll be like, "You can ask me to take the trash out. It's okay."
Oh,
Okay.
I love that. And he's creating a
Yeah.
safe space for you, right? And it's funny that you say that. I feel that's so synchronistic. I have a very similar experience with my past as well, where it was like asking that individual to do anything. It was always like this big deal, and it was this frustration or anger or feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't even ask you to do a simple task without feeling
Yeah.
like being attacked. Right. And yeah, our body holds on to that, our mind holds on to that. And then we have like this instinctual fear of not being able to actually voice what we need or voice what we want. I saw that come up so much for myself. And I still see sometimes where it'll creep up because it's really part of our subconscious programming, especially if we've been in those long-term relationships that created those patterns of being that, now you're fully safe, right? In this relationship,
Hmm.
you're still seeing yourself show up that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories that in that relationship that in the moment was horrible, but now you kind of laugh at it?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I don't know if I laugh at it, but I will say that there was lots of horrible times. I think the catalyst to really me leaving the relationship was when he pulled a knife to my throat.
Mm.
And so now I look back at that time in my life and feeling that fear that I had and then recognizing, well, wait a second, what am I doing here? I look back at it and I kind of, maybe I can chuckle at it now a little bit because I'm like, why did it take me that experience when I had so many experiences previous, right? But it took
Yeah.
that experience to finally say, I'm not going to do this anymore. What am I doing? It's just odd, like how we can justify and stay in relationships that really don't serve us.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's almost like looking on, like, I have to look back at compassion with that individual because she was not aware then, right? I was a different version of myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that I didn't have to live that way. And I really feel like that's just that fear that was instilled in me that felt that I had to make something work. I had to stay, I had to justify, I had to, you know, a lot of women say, I got to stay for the kids, right? I did that. I got to stay because I'm in this religion. I got to stay because this is what I'm supposed to do to be a good girl, right? And otherwise,
Yeah.
God's mad at me. There was just so many components around it. But yeah, now I can look back and say, well, that was just plain silly that it took me that instance to finally wake
Yeah.
up.
I know it was kind of a weird question. I was just thinking of the first time I ever took my wedding ring off and said, I don't want to be married to someone like you. Of course, I went back to him after that. But he was a drug addict, and so he'd come home, he'd do his drugs, and he'd fall asleep. And I went to the store while he was asleep, got him a Hot Pocket, came home. I got hungry. I ate the Hot Pocket. And then I told him when he woke up, I got you a Hot Pocket, but you slept too long and I got hungry and I ate it. And he flipped out on me for eating his Hot Pocket that he didn't even know that I had bought him. And it was so bad. He was like calling me a whore. You're a fucking whore. You ate my Hot Pocket.
Wow.
Even to where his best friend was standing next to me and we're both going, like, I look back now, I laugh, I call myself the Hot Pocket whore and all that. But then I went back.
Yeah.
And like what you were saying, like you were a different person back then. In these relationships, they slowly chip pieces of you away until
Mhm.
suddenly you're not you anymore. And you're like, I don't even know who I am,
Yes.
you know?
That is exactly the way I feel about it. I didn't know who I was. I actually don't know. I look back at my life and it wasn't just the relationship. I didn't know who I was because I was told who I had to be my whole life. I was
Mm.
told who I had to act like, be like, what I needed to say, what I had to wear. Like it was so restrictive. I don't know if I was able to ever discover who I really was until I left. I was 35 years old, right? When I left behind that society, when I left that relationship, when I was able to go and discover, like, who do I want to be? Who am I going to be? What does that look like? What is that going to feel like?
Yeah.
Just realizing I lived in this such a confined space. And now it's like, oh, I can finally feel expansive, right? I can go and discover who I want to be, and be curious.
Yeah. How do you feel now?
I feel very free. I feel like even though it's like, obviously I'm still on this healing journey, which I don't think ever ends. I think, once you have trauma, you kind of are always healing. There's new layers, right, to uncover all the time.
Yeah.
But it's like a feeling of a sense of peace,
Yeah.
like finally being able to sort of like discover who I am, discover what I believe,
Hmm.
be more in touch with myself. And it's empowering, truly.
I love that. Also, what came to me is like you're able to breathe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm so able
Yeah.
to breathe.
Yeah. So, do you work with people like you who have a similar story? Or,
Yeah. It's interesting. I do find women that are coming out of the cult that I was in, um, or had been in the cult and are still realizing that there's effects still trickling down from years ago.
hmm.
And then I mostly work with women that really do have my story, right? They've been trapped in abusive relationships and they have childhood trauma. And a lot of these women usually have what we call the father wound, where either their father was absent or their father was abusive, um, or harmed them in some way, you
Mm.
know, sexual abuse or otherwise. So it's finding those women that really do have my story. And they resonate because I was able to rewrite my story in my life by, doing the work that I've done. And that's why I do it, is to help these women do the same thing, recognizing they can break free, right? Like they don't have to
Yeah.
stay stay in this space anymore. Like they get to go and truly heal and move forward with their lives.
Awesome. Are you working on any projects or?
Oh gosh, I'm always working on projects. I I always am. So I'm currently actually working on I released a book a couple months ago for it's called The Grief Monster. It's a children's book. So it's about a little boy that loses his dad. That's what happened to my children. Their father died in 2020. So I felt that was like really needed in that community for kids grieving. And then currently I am working on getting my memoir into a traditional publishing house. So it's going to be a story of not only my life, but also, like being in the cult, growing up in the cult, but also like living in abuse and being able to teach women what that looks like from really a larger picture, a bigger picture of these women that are struggling and suffering from these abusive and toxic relationships. That looks like and why did they get trapped, like helping them understand the why, so that they can start to rewrite their story, because I think that's really why I went the path that I did, was to help women see that that is a possibility. And that's what this book is for. So that is I'm hopeful to come out this year, once I find that publisher. And then I'm working on my next children's book as well. So that's going to be just a part of this emotional intelligence series for children. So yeah, I'm always working on fun projects. I love to create. I love to write. It is my passion.
Nice. Where can people find you?
So lifecoachinggoddess.com is my website. I'm on all the social media, LinkedIn, Instagram is Life Coaching Goddess, TikTok even. So they can find me there. I have a beautiful website that also kind of tells you a little bit more about me. Taking an emotional trauma quiz to see if you are suffering, what that looks like for you, and being able to be curious about, okay, how could I maybe relieve some of this that's kind of coming up for me, because we want to try to run away from our problems, right? So either we're drowning them by like alcohol or drugs or social media scrolling or like being workaholics. Like we're always trying to run and outchase or outrun our issues. But once we like kind of face them, we're able to kind of be free of them and recognize we can face them and we can work through them, and feel again like human beings, and kind of be able to sit in the stillness and not have to feel like we have to live with this trauma for the rest of our lives.
Nice.
Yeah.
I do have one more question for you, which I ask at the end of every episode, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
I always say heal your mind and you can change your life. I feel like that's really what happened for me. Struggling with complex PTSD, extreme anxiety, and depression. It was like the minute that I chose to take that journey of healing my mind, and facing what I needed to face, it was life-changing for me. It's given me back something that I didn't think that was possible for me, to be honest. I thought I had to sit in the suffering. I thought I was never going to feel like I could escape that suffering. But it is truly possible. And each and every woman or man needs to know that that is something that they can have too.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, Brooke Kekos signing off. Until next time.